And I'm honored, I'm humbled rather, to moderate this show. And I'll be moderating alongside my fellow SheDecides ambassador, Umama from Bangladesh. So the theme of this webinar is translating CSE commitments into actions. That is the strategies to successfully implement CSE, that is Comprehensive Sexual Education. And all of us on board know how important CSE is. We don't need to stress on that. And we are here to look at the way forward, more of action and less of talk. So I'm going to be handing over to my co-moderator, Umama, to briefly introduce herself, and then we're going to kickstart the program officially. So once more, you're very much welcome. Stay comfortable and stay with us till the end of the program.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. So as Cynthia mentioned, my name is Umama Zilur. I am also a fellow SheDecides 25 by 25 young leader from Bangladesh. Just to give a little bit of background of my work with CSE, I've been working to popularize comprehensive sexuality education in the anti-rape movement in Bangladesh, because I believe CSE can help us fight root causes of gender-based violence, like harmful social norms and attitudes and behavior. I'm the founder of a feminist organization called Kieta, and my team and I launched Bangladesh's first fully youth-led CSE program, impacting over 500 students. So that's just a little bit about me. I do want to quickly pass it back to my co-moderator, Cynthia, because I think she was too humble to not mention a little bit about her CSE activism. So Cynthia, please, if you can share with everyone.
Oh, thank you, Mama. Actually, I'm from Cameroon, like I said, and back in my community, CSE is actually one of those taboo or forbidden topics that people don't like to talk about because of their social stereotypes and their conservative nature. So what I'm currently doing in partnership with SheDecides is I'm working in secondary schools. We're trying to implement CSE as part of the curriculum. It's been a very tough ride because we are facing lots of should I say, kickbacks from teachers and parents, because the whole idea of CSE is a bit mixed up. Some say we're trying to corrupt their kids. Others don't really get the main idea behind CSE. But so far, so good. We've actually gotten 2 schools to start up with, and we are hoping that this academic year we're going to begin. I also run a WhatsApp group chat called the SheDecides Weekly Spills. And many people ask me, why did I choose WhatsApp? Back in my country, people don't have enough access to internet, especially youth, to be able to stay for long conversations on Zoom like this one. So they're always found on WhatsApp. So I saw the opportunity and I grabbed it. And so far we have over 120 active youths where we hold weekly live chats every Saturdays. We talk about some various taboo topics like abortion, the sexual education, sexuality and all its forms. So that's what I've been doing in my community so far with regards to CSE, and obviously we're going to be doing more. So Umama, back to you before we continue.
Great, thank you for that, Cynthia. So I just wanted to note for our audience that this event is actually one of the only few official side events that are centered around CSE and SRHR. So we are absolutely thrilled to have all of you join us for this really important conversation. And as a CSE activist myself, I'm particularly excited to see this embedded in the larger conversation around education, because I think for CSE to help us transform societies, we really need institutional commitments that translate to action. It's time's up to have, CSE as an afterthought. And just to remind everybody, and I know all of us know this very well, that CSE and SRHR can help young girls avoid child early marriage and unions, avoid unintended adolescent pregnancy, but more importantly, it can help young girls build confidence, realize and raise their voice and realize their right to bodily autonomy. And at the same time, CSE is also able to teach young boys about accountability for themselves and their peers. And so this both together help us further our agenda for gender justice. So I'll just quickly go over some logistics. We're happy to let everyone know that we have translation available in French and Spanish. So if you could just look at the globe icon at the bottom right next to the raise hand option. If you click on that, you should be able to choose your preferred language from the options. And we also welcome you all to share questions that you might have using the Q&A tool, and someone from our team will address those. And lastly, we are really happy to have with us a young feminist activist, artist, Ipshita, who will illustrate and capture the main takeaways from today's conversation. So with that, I will pass it back to Cynthia. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Umama, for the clarifications. And like I said earlier, the chat is going to be interesting, so you would really want to stay till the end. So before we kickstart the program, we are going to be having a short video played from Plan International and Transform Education, reminding us that we need more of action and policies in pushing forward the CSE movement. So over to you, Becky.
We don't want any more promises. We don't want you to shift the blame. We don't want bits and pieces. We demand real change with actions and policies.
Thank you so much, Becky. No more excuses. In fact, there is no room for excuses. All we need now is policy, and we need the action. And that is exactly why we are gathered here today. So once more, you're very much welcome to this webinar, one of its kind. And we're going to kickstart the program with our very first speaker that I'm privileged to introduce, who goes by the name Bhagyashri. I don't know if I pronounced it very well. And she is the Executive Director, Asia Pacific Regional Policy and Practice Plan International. She's also a professional with more than 30 years of experience in governance and gender advocacy. She's a change-driven agent, and we are so pleased to have you on board. So over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Cynthia and Umama, both for starting off this event with such powerful words and for the introduction. It is so critical to hear directly from young people as to why comprehensive sexuality education is important to them, and to recognize the need to ensure that adolescents and young people have a seat at the decision-making table when it comes to issues that directly affect them. We know that CSE is important for so many reasons. You just mentioned that. It is important to keep girls in school, to avoid the risk of unintended pregnancies, prevent child marriages, and FGMC, to tackle gender-based violence, and as a critical strategy to achieving gender equality so that all girls can fulfill their potential. At Plan International, we deliver and support progress towards CSE programming in around 30 countries worldwide. In 2020, we also launched a set of 14 CSE program standards building on best practice evidence. The standards, which are called Putting the C in CSE, emphasize the need for a comprehensive approach in 3 key domains: content, delivery, and the enabling environment. Our guidance comprises key elements for working in and out of schools, from early childhood to early adulthood, and emphasizes gender transformation and a positive approach to sexuality. Of course, there are great challenges to contextualization, and that is why we need to keep learning. We also need to keep up our concerted efforts to build supportive values and attitudes in favor of CSE. On that note, it's wonderful to see that in recent years, there has been considerable political momentum on improving access to and implementation of CSE. We have seen efforts both within schools and in out-of-school settings. We have also seen moves to ensure CSE is not only in development settings, but also in times of crisis, including during the COVID pandemic currently. Commitments have been made in national, regional, and global spaces, including at Nairobi Summit in 2019, the Paris Generation Equality Forum earlier this month, and within the G7 in the Girls' Education Declaration. However, while strong technical guidance on CSE exists and political will is growing, many countries face challenges in implementation. Of course, it is a journey. No one country has got there yet. And with that in mind, I'm excited to formally launch today a new tool that we have developed to help governments and other actors turn their commitments into tangible progress and action. The tool we are launching today provides a range of strategies that governments and others can use to drive progress. It provides guidance and practical tips on all stages of the implementation process, from policy making and budgeting to stakeholder and community engagement. We hope that the tool will be a useful resource to drive progress on implementing CSE across the world, with a view to ensuring that all children, adolescents, and young people have access to CSE wherever they live without discrimination. We also hope that the tool will promote peer-to-peer learning as we learn from each other on how different approaches have worked in different contexts. In the session today, we are going to bring to life some of the strategies that are covered in the tool by profiling some examples of how these strategies have been used successfully in different contexts. I thank you once again for joining us today and hope you enjoy this session. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those very brief but direct and action-filled words. So I'll be handing over to Umama to introduce the next speaker.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So up next, we're very happy to have with us Diene Kieta, who is the Deputy Executive Director of Program UNFPA. So Diene, we just celebrated the 25 years of the iconic Beijing conference. We also had commitments to CSE during the G7 and ICPD 25. What are your reflections on the progress made so far surrounding CSE, and what do you think is needed at this moment to keep up the momentum and make sure those commitments actually translate to actions?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Umama. Dear SheDecides Ambassador Umama and Cynthia, Honorable Special Envoy Grant, Deputy Director General Kieta, Executive Director Dengle, dear young leaders Rahama and Eunice, esteemed partners, colleagues, distinguished guests. It is really my pleasure to join you today for this celebration of commitment to deliver comprehensive sexuality education in school and out of school settings. This, to answer to your question, this is a moment of change. This is a moment when we realize the right and choices of all adolescents and young people. This is the time for action, to walk the talk everywhere and work hand in hand with government to support them, ensure that this policy can be implemented everywhere. The United Nations Population Fund, as the UN Sexual and Reproductive Health Agency, works with government and partners to implement comprehensive sexuality education in and out of school through training in community and online. At UNFPA, we promote policies and investment in sexuality education programs based on gender transformative approach to empower all young people. In humanitarian settings, UNFPA works with young people to identify entry points for restarting culturally relevant and context-appropriate sexuality education, such as through teacher, facilitator, or peer training. CSEs plays a central role in preparing young people for a safe, productive, fulfilling life in a world where inequalities based on gender, sexual orientation, disability, or HIV status still pose serious risks to their well-being. Comprehensive sexuality education gives young people the tools they need to have healthy relationships, and it helps them navigate life-changing decisions about their body and sexual and reproductive health. However, despite the benefits of high-quality comprehensive sexuality education, few young people receive it, meaning they are less empowered to make informed decisions about their sexuality and relationships. Delivering CSE is not easy. In some places, comprehensive sexuality education instructors experience pushback, and rural populations are more likely to be left behind. And this is where the young people enter into game, where every young people leader needs to teach own parent and any adult around them to make them realize the importance of CSE. The COVID-19 pandemic has added to the challenges of reaching the significant proportion of adolescents who are out of school in many countries. UNFPA technical brief called Learning Beyond the Classroom, Adapting Comprehensive Sexuality Education Programming During the COVID-19 Pandemic, provides practical advice for adapting comprehensive sexuality education programs. Nonetheless, the impact of failing to deliver CSE can be seen far beyond the classrooms. We have seen increased prevalence of female genital mutilation, child marriage, teenage pregnancies, and school dropout. Any action limiting or restricting comprehensive sexuality education creates barrier in promoting rights and restrain young people's future potential decent fulfillment. In 2020, UNFPA and partners launched the International Technical and Programmatic Guidance for Out-of-School Comprehensive Sexuality Education to reach young people left behind. The guidance is now being tested in countries including Colombia, Ethiopia, Ghana, Iran, and Malawi. Moreover, earlier this year, UNFPA initiated a global level dialogue with faith-based leaders to build on existing effort and provide a platform that lays the foundation to advocate for comprehensive sexuality education as a gender transformative approach and support to ending violence against women and girls. Dear all, collective endeavor and partnership can turn commitment into action, and we have many examples. Following the Nairobi ICPD 25 summit, North Macedonia passed a law leading to a new digital platform for CSE. In Zambia, CSE has been key part of the national curriculum since 2014, resulting in increased uptake of sexual and reproductive health services amongst young people. In Colombia, out-of-school CSE intervention complement in-school training for the most vulnerable groups. Last but not least, with private sector partners, we are creating a platform for youth to access age-appropriate and accurate sexual and reproductive health and right information across Southern Africa. As a global community committed to CSE, UNFPA and UNESCO, together with our partners, took the initiative to establish the Global Partnership Forum on CSE, which brings together over 60 members, including youth organizations. This forum plays a key role in delivering the Generation Equality Forum Action Coalition on sexual and reproductive health and right and bodily autonomy commitment. It also facilitates and promotes collaboration on common advocacy, research, and programming objectives, and create a first-of-a-kind platform for partnership on CSE. Together, as partners, we have a wealth of knowledge, best practice, and drive to ensure that every young person receives the sexuality education they need to lead healthy lives and relationships. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Diene, for reminding us that change is possible and change is very much needed. I will pass it back to Cynthia to carry the program forward.
Thank you so much, Umama. Next on our list of speakers, we have Ms. Campasserit. And permit me give a very brief intro about our next speaker. She's the Deputy Director General, Ministry of Education and Sports of Laos, and she's somebody that is very passionate about education, especially in institutionalizing the CSE commitments. She also has a double master's of Art in Education and a Master's in Project Management. So we are very much pleased to have you on our webinar today, Ms. Campassoy. Is she available? Okay, so thank you so much. In order to ensure that no one is actually left behind, CSE provision is critical both in schools and out of school settings. So how have you been working in Laos to ensure this? And what approaches have you used to reach the most marginalized? And also, especially with the COVID-19 pandemic, what innovative approaches have you used in implementing your CSE movement? So you're muted. Can you unmute yourself? You are currently muted. Okay.
So thank you very much for giving the opportunity for Lao PDR to present. First of all, Honorable Special Envoy, Ms. Helen Grant, Deputy Executive Director of Program UNFPA, Ms. Diene Kieta, Executive Director, Asian Pacific Region Policy and Practice Plan International, Ms. Bhagyashri Dengle, and other speakers, linguistic guests, and participants. I would like to thank to the organizer for providing this opportunity for Lao PDR to speak and share our work on comprehensive sexual education in the event of Global Education Summit. The background is that providing comprehensive sexual education to young people in Lao PDR is very important as we have over 58% population below age 25 years. Lao PDR is well positioned for benefiting from the demographic dividends. However, our young people are still facing challenges such as adolescence, pregnancy, early marriage, high school dropout rate, and we are addressing on priority. We believe that CSE is the pathway to build the resilient young generation, achieve gender equity, and realize on benefit of demography dividends. The government of Lao PDR, especially the Ministry of Education and Sport, with the partners committed at the ICPD 2025 Nairobi Summit to full integrate CSE into the curriculum nationwide by 2030. To deliver our commitment, we have included CSE in the 9th education in sport sectors development plan, which is a 5-year plan from 2021 to 2026. We have taken system and then phase approach to deliver and scale up a comprehensive sexuality education through primary education, secondary education, TVET education in Lao PDR. The system approach CSE deliver in Lao involves, the first is the working with the curriculum level to review the revised curriculum in textbook as well as the developing the CSE material teaching aid for the teacher. The second thing is that we train a relevant subject teacher on CSE. At present, a core group of master trainers are conducting the training while we are working, including in the curriculum of teacher training, college, university in the near future. And the third thing, training education staff from central level, provincial and district. This is the level that we are managing in our education system in Lao PDR to monitor CSE deliver following the monitor tool developed for this purpose. And also the fourth thing is that at the service level, this effort of MOES is supplementary by the Ministry of Health, Lao Youth Union, Lao Women Union work on strengthening adolescent friendly health service from health center, HPV vaccination in helpline service on SRHR, mental health in GBP. And the fifth thing that we are doing is at the committee level. This effort is supplemented by work of the Lao Youth Union and Lao Women Union to create awareness among parents and village authority on adolescents, SHR. The phase approach is scaling up CSE involved piloting CSE in selecting a district in province and In learning from this pilot through assessment, research, and scale up CSE in phased manner using this learning. We strongly coordinated with the mechanism of ensuring the unified approach that help to reduce duplication efforts. UNFPA is the main coordinating agency on providing technical assistance to the MOEs on CSE, and they coordinated with the INGO national organization to stream CSE scale up. The partners of UNFPA plan international support MOEs to expand CSE delivery on schools on the focus area and develop the model that emphasizes on the adolescents' participation. For example, developing peer-to-peer learning tool kit is collaboration with students and teachers to be used in student club to supplement the classroom CSE teaching. Plan is to look at engaging students in developing a school development plan in order to incorporate adolescents' voice in overlapping with the development of the school environment. In addition to this, we are using digital technology to deliver SCRH information via website and mobile application during the COVID-19 when schools were closed. And MOS developed the series of 5 CSE video and then upload them in the MOE website and learning platform we call Kang Panya Lao. So other applications such as Nang Noi Yaku, Hook Mi Pan, Melin Pu Pahut development by various organizations in cooperation with the MOES and MOES Ministry of Health, of course, are being used to provide adolescents with the SRHR information via social media, website, and mobile application in Lao language. The joint effort MOES, UNFPA, Plan International, Shy Fund, and other partners have delivered CSE to 53,000 secondary students in 5 provinces, along with over 3,000 TVET students in provinces. This year, we expect to expand CS at TVET College in 4 new provinces, which is we have 18 provinces, but we expand more 4. We support the promotion of Family Health Association at Healthcare Foundation. And we committed providing CS to all adolescents and young people across the country by 2030. This is a huge task. It would be require more fund and resources. As you are aware that CS training requests addressing deep entrenchment of social and gender norm among the CSE educators. As such, developing the capacity among teachers required repeatedly in service training and in which is a resource incentive. Although the ICT provide more solution to it, but we do face challenge posed by weak data coverage in digital gender divide. We are advocating increased investment on CSE and seek more resources for CSE from the government and other development partners to address to ensure delivery of CSE across the country in accelerating progress toward achieving ICPD 2025 commitment in sustainable development goal. Thank you very much for patiently listening to the implementation in Lao PDR. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. You people have quite an exhaustive and elaborate plan, and it's quite impressive to know that the community is not being left out. So thank you so much. I'm now going to hand over to Umama to proceed with the rest of the webinar.
Thank you, Cynthia. So next up, we have Rahama Bungudu, the Youth Engagement and Advocacy Engagement and Advocacy Officer from MSI Nigeria. Rahama, if you could share with us how you've been working with MSI to link CSE CSE to adolescent responsive health services? That would be great.
Thank you, Umama. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rahama Bungudu. I am the Youth Engagement and Advocacy Officer for MSI in Nigeria. And I'm really excited to be here with you all to share some of the work that we do here on comprehensive sexuality education and the role CSE and reproductive choice play in supporting girls to remain in education and pursue their futures. Unplanned teenage pregnancy continues to rob girls and young women of their education. Analysis from MSI shows that up to 4 million girls drop out of school or are excluded every year across sub-Saharan Africa due to unplanned pregnancy. In my country, Nigeria, almost 1 in 4 girls aged 15 to 19 have begun childbearing by the age of 19. In rural regions, this increases to 1 in 3 adolescents. By providing young people with reproductive choices via comprehensive sexuality education and access to adolescent-friendly services, we can support young people to better understand their bodies, have safe relationships on their terms, avoid unplanned pregnancies, and pursue their futures. At MSI Nigeria, we are working to do so by partnering with local schools to deliver comprehensive sexuality education in schools and through the Nigerian Youth Services Scheme, a mandatory 1-year scheme for all Nigerian graduates. Through this platform, we engage with core members in some states of intervention. We deliver awareness-building workshops on young people's reproductive health care and rights, engaging young people meaningfully to design services that are truly inclusive and adolescent-friendly. An estimated 70% of attendees on this scheme work within the education system, meaning they then go on to cascade knowledge gained to students in their schools of engagement. Some act as ambassadors for sexual and reproductive health care within their own schools, working as peer educators for young people within school hours and offering after-school clubs with information on where to access adolescent-friendly care. I myself went through the scheme, and in my region and my community, which is a largely Muslim community in northern Nigeria, conversations around reproductive choice can be stigmatized. But going through the scheme and learning about SRHR allowed me to become a champion for reproductive choice, opening conversations in a culturally sensitive way and expanding access for young people in my community. And it was during my National Youth Service year with MSI Nigeria that I was able to see the impact of SRH information and services in young people and women's lives. Seeing these young girls and women become empowered with the information and using it to further their education and careers gives me a huge sense of fulfillment. A client recently shared her story with us. She came to MSI to access an FP service just after starting her bachelor's degree. She's had her first child and has taken up another service to allow her to further her education and start her career. It's inspiring success stories like this that drive MSI Nigeria to continue its work in CSE, so that more girls and young women have the opportunity to be the best versions of themselves. But too many girls continue to have a very different story from mine. For example, a young girl in my neighborhood recently found out that she was pregnant after her first sexual encounter. What stood out for me is the fact that she didn't even understand how her menstrual cycles worked. To know missing a period could be a sign of pregnancy. As a result of her pregnancy, she was sadly forced to drop out of school. If this young woman had access to information and contraceptive services prior to that first sexual encounter, she could have been protected from unintended pregnancy, allowing her to remain in education and pursue her future. To make sure other young people have the same opportunities I did, we need to deliver reproductive choice to all, with a focus on adolescents who are often left behind. At MSI, we are working to do so globally, providing reproductive choice to over 1.5 million adolescents around the world in 2020 alone. But to ensure all young people who want access to services have it, we need 4 things: to improve comprehensive sexuality education, to increase the availability of adolescent-friendly reproductive health services, to remove the needless restrictions that prevent young people from accessing care, and to ensure sufficient funding for adolescent sexual and reproductive healthcare services. Only then, in partnership, can we ensure that all young people have access to the reproductive choices they want and need to avoid unplanned pregnancy, remain in education, and pursue their futures, helping to build a more gender equal world for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rahama, for sharing with us. What an absolutely brilliant case study in linking CSE directly to services, and not just services, but services that really do center young people. All right, back to Cynthia.
Thank you so much, Umama. And I'm actually learning quite a lot from everybody that has been on point. So I'm actually very excited to introduce our next speaker. I've actually read a lot of her works online. So it's a privilege to actually get to introduce her on this platform. And I'm talking about no other than Her Excellency, Helen Grant, who is the Prime Minister's Special Envoy for Girls Education UK. So she has quite a lot going on, especially with advocating for girls' education. So we're very much pleased to have you on board. So CSE is a critical component of education to keep girls in school, to address gender-based violence and tackle harmful gender stereotypes in the society. It is also vital for ensuring that all children, adolescents, and young people can make informed decisions about their bodies and lives and can realize their full potential, which in turn also benefits both their families and broader society. So how is the FCDO working to ensure CSE as a critical component of its education work? And what ask do you have of others around CSE priorities and commitments?
Well, thank you very much indeed, Cynthia and Umama, and thank you, Cynthia, for your kind words. And I can tell you, I'm also learning an awful lot from this really important discussion that we're having today. So thank you so much for inviting me. As many of you will know, 2021 is a major year for us in the UK. We are presidents of the G7 and COP26, and we're co-hosting the Global Education Summit, which starts officially this Wednesday. And all of these are real watershed moments with big opportunities to shine a spotlight on the importance of girls' education, the transformational impact that it can have, and the barriers, of course, that still actually exist. And I'm hugely honoured, I have to say, to be the Prime Minister's Special Envoy for Girls' Education. My role is very much to champion his message that providing 12 years of quality education for every single girl on the planet is one of the best ways of tackling many of the major issues facing the world today, such as poverty, climate change, and inequality. Investing in girls is an absolute game changer. If we want to change the world for the better, girls' education is a great, great place to start. And we know that a child of a mother who can read is 50% more likely to live beyond the age of 5, twice as likely to go to school themselves, and 50% more likely to be immunised. We know too that girls who are educated are more able to choose if, when, and how many children they actually have. So girls' education is vital for women and girls and their own self-empowerment, but it is also important in levelling up society, boosting incomes, and developing economies and nations. Comprehensive sexuality education is a key component to a good education. It's critical in empowering our young people with the knowledge and skills they need to make informed choices about their bodies and about their lives. It's also key in realising gender equality by challenging harmful norms and stereotypes. And with this in mind, I was delighted to hear about the UK aid-funded Itsagola Langa programme. Here, Population Services International have been working very closely with UNESCO and the Malawian Ministries of Health and Education. The CSE guidance and booklet that they developed is used in schools, and the government of Malawi hope to roll this out nationwide. We also know how important it is for teachers to feel confident in leading in these very important lessons. So following the launch of the UK statutory guidance on relationships and sex education last year, the government is supporting teachers to build their confidence, learning from great examples coming from across the country. We know too that some people still find it very uncomfortable to talk about CSE, but by explaining what it is and by sharing the evidence of the positive impact it can have on young people, we can help to demystify all of it in schools and communities and around the world. And I actually saw some of this for myself in practice during a recent visit to Sierra Leone. I went to a secondary school in Tombo and observed a UK aid-funded radio lesson on menstrual health and hygiene. The lesson taught girls and boys that periods were a natural thing. There was nothing to be ashamed about. There was nothing to be worried about. And interestingly, at the end of the class, when we were talking to the girls in the class said that the boys knowing about periods helped them to feel more confident in school. And for me, this really highlighted the importance of including both girls and boys in these conversations. When young people know more about their sexual, reproductive, and health rights, they can make informed choices that can help them thrive both in and out of school. CSE is a critical part of this. It's a critical part of their empowerment. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much. It was indeed a very rich one. And I picked out two main points. You said investing in girls is actually a game changer. And just the fact that we are here, some of us are ladies, it's a living proof because someone invested in us. And the proof is quite evident. And the second one is actually explaining what CSE is with proof of its positivities can help to demystify. And that's something that I think if we begin to share the positivities of CSE, many people will begin to come to terms with actually why it's important to push forward the motion. So thank you very much. I'll hand over again to my co-moderator, Umama, to introduce the next speaker.
All right, so last but not least, we have with us Eunice Garcia, Youth Coalition for SRR. Eunice, if you want to.
Hi, thank you very much. My name is Eunice and I am the Executive Director at the Youth Coalition for Sexual and Reproductive Rights. And the Youth Coalition is a youth-led organization that works internationally to advance youth-centered SRHR policies. And well, there are so many things that I have to say here around accountability and CSE. And the reality is that we have been working really hard this past year, especially with as youth leaders of the Action Coalition on Bodily Autonomy and SRHR at the Generation Equality Forums. And even though we have been working on comprehensive sexuality education for many years, I think that the action coalitions have been very important for us to kind of like rethink how are we doing advocacy and what are the priorities of young people, especially around accountability and transparency. And one of the main things that we want to highlight in our work is that while many people are focusing on targeting young people and explaining why it is so important to empower young people to make decisions over their own bodies, there is also the opposition that young people are facing in terms of CSE. And the reality is that 100% of the young people and adolescents that we've talked to agree that the one of the biggest barriers, or maybe like the biggest barrier to be able to talk about comprehensive sexuality education is adult keepers and adults in general, the parents, the teachers, the policymakers, people who are in power. And it is very hard to navigate that because as we are trying to advance gender equality, the anti-rights groups are also growing stronger, and they have so many resources that young people do not have to make their agendas visible. And this has been very challenging for young advocates around the world. We've talked to young people from different countries, from Mexico to the Netherlands, from the Philippines to Ghana, and everyone tells the same story, that there are so many challenges to implement CSE because decision makers do not understand what CSE really is, and people are afraid about addressing CSE in a more holistic way. We always seem to have this comprehensive sexuality education that focuses only on the reproductive part of life, and on like how it is important to make decisions about how many kids and how, like, when to reproduce, but no one is really addressing comprehensive sexuality education from a pleasure point of view, from a bodily autonomy point of view. And we've had consultations with adolescent girls and with non-binary people, with trans folks, and everyone is very concerned about how young people are targeted around their reproductive lives, but no one is really addressing all of the other things that are a priority for them, which is like gender identity and sexual orientation. We've had this conversation with adolescents, girls and adolescents folks, like non-binary folks and trans folks, and they agree that they do not have enough information about how to like positive information around how to perceive or how to address like their sexualized from a positive perspective, from an affirmation perspective, that sex is positive, that sex is not something that you should prevent and that you should only be focusing on the harmful part of it. But like, how do we shift the conversation to addressing CSE from a perspective that is like, hey, like, this is actually also a very positive part of life, right? And that's something that is missing from the curriculum, is missing from the discussions around comprehensive sexuality education. And we understand the importance of addressing it from a health perspective, but it's also important addressing comprehensive sexuality education from the individual's perspective. And we've had this conversation, as I was saying, with different people from different groups. And for example, like adolescent girls were like, we're never giving information on how to have like a safe relationship, or like how to have healthy relationship, and how to interact with I don't know, like other adolescent girls, because we're always thinking about CSE from the binary and from the heterosexual point of view. And there are many adolescents that do not even recognize themselves or identify themselves with the conversations that we're having. And that's why it is so important to shift the power. And when we talk about how it is so important to empower young people and to allow young people to be in the driver's seat, this is something that we believe that is so far from happening still, because even though everyone talks about the importance of youth leadership, the reality is that youth leadership is something that people do not understand either, like how to implement that shift of power. And during the Generation Equality Forums and during the Action Coalition's work, we've been working with all the other young people, and we've created this amazing Young Feminist Manifesto that addresses some of the principles that young people want to see when we talk about meaningful youth engagement, because we cannot have policies targeting young people without meaningful youth engagement. Otherwise, that's not going to work. And when we talk about this and how we want to look at this, we have to mention that there are three main principles that the Youth Coalition is working around, which is co-ownership, co-leadership, and co-design of the spaces. And in many times when we talk with governments about how can we improve meaningful youth engagement, everyone is like, well, there are these programs and these programs are targeting young people. But what we really want to see is that young people, youth-led organizations are really owning the spaces and are really designing the agendas and designing the strategies to reach other young people. Otherwise, these efforts are going to be empty and are not going to be really meaningful. We also talk about, we also want to address that comprehensive sexuality education can also tackle harmful practices, but it's not only around early unions or female genital mutilation. It's also about how do you exercise your rights, how you oppose to forced sterilization, to forced contraception, because we always talk about the part where we need to control the reproduction of people. But then when we take a look at what is happening with racialized young people, what is happening with women with disabilities, what's happening to indigenous young people around forced sterilization, forced contraceptions, forced abortion, and all of these practices. Those are really harmful practices as well that only impact, or that impact mostly people from specific minorities. And then when we talk about what's important for young people, we have to understand that accountability has many layers. And accountability has to do with the fact that young people need transparency to know how policies are being implemented. They need transparency to understand how can they become part of the process, how can they lead the process, how can they meaningfully engage in the process. And then young people also need the tools to hold their governments and other stakeholders accountable, because at some point there are governments who are doing amazing work to implement comprehensive sexuality education in school. However, the reality is that school boards have a lot of independence and autonomy. Schools have a lot of independence and autonomy with internal policies, and those are barriers that affect young people to be able to access this information. And just to finalize, I think that this is a very amazing space for us, especially because we have tried in the past to put together.
I think Eunice may be experiencing some technical difficulties. I'll give it just a second. All right, I think we will have to move on and then we can come back during reflections. So I think Eunice covered a lot of really important and key points, especially because we did have a lot of talk around youth empowerment, and that last bit really told us what youth empowerment actually means and how much we really need to focus on the comprehensive part of comprehensive sexuality education and understand all the nuances, all the different topics that go into it, instead of going into narrow definitions of what CSE means. All right, I think that was our last speaker. We are okay on time, a little short, so we have time for 30-second reflections from all our speakers. I will request everybody to really make sure that it is 30 seconds so we can all wrap up by the time that we have designated for today. Cynthia, do you want to bring on the first person for reflections?
Okay, Umama, thank you so much. Just a quick reminder that the reflections are actually the kind of actions that you would like people to take in order to ensure that CSE commitments are fully realized. So I'm going to be beginning with the first speaker, Madam Bhagyashri. So please, let's try to stick to the 30 seconds time limit and be as precise as you can be. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. So thank you for all the wonderful, speeches. And so for me, my call to action for this session is that governments, donors, advocates, and others read and actively use this tool that we are launching today to support their work on comprehensive sexuality education, to generate new learnings and to help ensure that commitments made on CSE are genuinely able to translate into tangible actions at the national level for children, adolescents, and young people. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Umama, please.
Thank you. Diene, if you want to share from your end.
Sure, with pleasure. Really, it was inspirational. And this, we just have to do one thing, walk the talk on the beautiful talk we have done here. And just like Honorable Grant said, girl education is at the center of it. So all of us, let's do our part with our different partners, government, civil society, private sector, and all of us. Thank you so much for having me. Let's walk the talk.
Thank you so much. We are definitely going to walk the talk. That's a very short keyhole message. Walk the talk. Okay, Ms. Campasert, your call for action. You are muted. Can you please unmute yourself?
So thank you very much for sharing information. My call for action is that a comprehensive sexual education is very important tool, is to drive people in the right direction, especially for young people have to go to the right direction. So I believe that whatever we share together, we have to commit to achieve this as we plan. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think next up we have Rahama Bungudu.
Thank you, Umama. It's been really inspiring to hear from partners across the world fighting for young people to have the information they want and need to understand their bodies and have safe relationships on their terms. I'd like to ask all governments and donors looking to improve girls' access to education to not forget the millions of girls who are forced out of school every year due to teenage pregnancy. If we're going to tackle the global education crisis, we need to ensure young people have accurate information on their sexual health and are signposted to the adolescent-friendly services they want and need. We need to ensure that funding for adolescent-friendly services are protected and expanded. That way, young people can access the reproductive choices they need to remain in school, pursue their futures, and contribute to building a more equal, sustainable world for all of us. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Rahama. Just a quick note, the tool has actually been placed in the chat section, so you can actually find a link to access the tool there. So over to you, Her Excellency, your call to action words for those that are here.
Thank you very much indeed, Cynthia, Umama, my fellow speakers, and everyone who has worked so hard to organise today. It's been amazing. Yeah, I also agree with fellow speakers. We've got to walk the talk. The discussion has highlighted to me as well that national governments must continue to invest and make sure those policies and practices are in place. And last but not least, we've got to keep our young people at the front and centre of this issue. We've got to listen to what they say they want and need. The youth of today are surely the leaders of tomorrow, and we must listen to them. Thank you.
Last, we are going back to Eunice Garcia.
Thank you so much. And I am so sorry. My internet died a few minutes ago. And just to close, I think that I just would like to add that young people also want to see mental health as a part of the CSE curriculum. That's something that is highly ignored in so many times. And that it is also very important not only to listen to young people, but to fund young people properly so that they can really lead and they can really keep working on the things that they are working. And I think that that's pretty much it for now. Thank you very much for inviting us.
Great, thank you so much. All right, that brings us to an end of 1 hour of such rich, exciting conversation. And I think we will all leave this conversation with a lot of energy to take back to our communities, our organizations, our nations, to really push forward the agenda for CSE. I think I would like to add, along with so many of our speakers, that it's really important to put youth at the center. And what does that mean for CSE? That means make sure that we have young people who are in program designing, who are in content development, and who are also in implementation. The tool that was launched today also talks about the importance of peer learning. And that's something that I have learned firsthand through my work, that peer learning can really build trust between comprehensive sexuality education. So I thank all of you for sharing your experiences, your commitments, and for your energy for the cause of comprehensive sexuality education for our young people. Cynthia, passing it on to you for last thoughts.
Thank you so much. And like all of us have correctly said, there is still a lot more to be done. So let's talk and more work in terms of comprehensive sexuality education. There are actually some questions and answers, some questions in the Q&A session. So I don't know if we're going to dive into the section directly, because I think we have about 4 or 3 questions there that are pending.
No, we'll pick those up directly with people afterwards. So I think we're at time. Thank you for highlighting them.
All right, so thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everybody. It was absolutely wonderful.
Thank you so much.